Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Beyond Screen Show here at Indiecade.
My name is Tatiana Villela dos Santos, and with me, as usual, is my trusty co-host, Alistair.
This Friday and Saturday mark the return of Indiecade's Night Games event. If you go down to Jerry Moss Plaza at the Music Center in downtown LA, you will be welcomed by a cavalcade of exciting multiplayer and alternative controller games. Tickets are free and info on how to RSVP is on the Indiecade website.
And in celebration of this, we have a very special show for you. We will be interviewing some of the developers who will be showing their games live at the event itself. Coming up tonight, we have Jason Morningstar, creator of Desperation, a chilling card game of role-playing and survival, which won this year's Tabletop Award. We also have Robin Baumgarten, previously an award winner for the All Control game Line Wobbler, who's bringing his brand new Wobble Sphere to Night Games.
These games and many more will be playable in LA this Friday and Saturday night. But first, our very first guests of the night, this year's Bernie DeKoven Big Fun Award winners. They are the creators of the legendary 10-player arcade game Killer Queen. Josh DeBonis and Nick Mikros from Bumblebear Games. So, to begin, let's take a look at their work in action. This is Killer Queen.
I used to get beat up every day in the schoolyard.
When I was younger, I just didn't know how to make friends.
There's not that many avenues to support good, healthy adult relationships.
When I started playing Killer Queen, there were people like, "Ah! Ah!" like people screaming. I played it and I was like instantly addicted.
Killer Queen is a 10-player arcade game, 5v5. There are scenes all over the country. It tends to produce tight-knit communities because the people you're playing with are people you hang out with on a Friday night.
3 years ago, I started playing Killer Queen, and everyone was just so welcoming. I was not used to that, especially growing up in New York, in Brooklyn.
This is the first time I've had so many friends that I know generally like to talk to me.
To come to such a giving place like Killer Queen made me feel really bad for all the people who don't get to experience a community like that.
Welcome to Minneapolis, you guys, in the opening ceremony here at Bumble Bash 2. We're so psyched to have you!
Killer Queen can get really, really competitive. You have friends, but then you have this intense rivalries with each other.
I'm gonna walk off this cab and shank you after our match. You had one job! And that's when shit goes to hell.
You just get so wrapped up in the game. And like wrapped up in like trash talking, wrapped up in like who the top scene is. It's a super intense feeling, but I kind of really like it.
It's always been hard for me to connect with people. Killer Queen has helped show me that maybe you don't have to do it alone. Maybe life is just a giant team-based game.
Josh, Nick, welcome to the stream. How are you doing?
Doing great. Nice to see you. How's it going?
Yeah, we're doing well, thanks. First off, congratulations on the award. That's, very well earned. I must say, like, watching that trailer there really does show, like, this is not just a game, this is a community, and that's something really, really special.
Thank you. Yeah, it was so cool just watching that right now. I haven't seen it in a while, and it was like, those are all our friends in that video, you know?
So how does that kind of community aspect come together? Was that something that you always had in mind from, the inception of the game, or did it grow organically?
I think it's hard to plan for something like that. So, no, we were just trying to make a game that would be fun for people to play. So, yeah, and then this kind of community grew around the game, which took us a little bit. I think what took us a little bit by surprise was the nature of the community, and like we didn't really think it was going to be a competitive game, and it wound up being incredibly competitive. So, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, and
Do
you
you
know,
think? Yeah.
initially we were planning on showing it primarily at festivals like Indiecade and Come Out and Play and stuff like that, and we did at first. But where the community really started to grow is once we started putting it in arcades where it had a permanent home, and because you could keep coming back to it week after week, like that's how you make friends, right? Is like these repeated encounters with them, right? That in our initial context are a lot harder. It's like, I mean, I think there is a community around Indiecade, but that's developed because of Indiecade, not because of the specific games there, you know. And it's around the festival, which keeps happening, right?
Absolutely.
Do you think the success of the success of the game is also because there is this gap left with the disparation of arcades and cyber coffees, this kind of places, and so it may feel this kind of need for a playful third place that's a spot that's not really occupied right now. So yeah, I mean,
we're seeing more and more arcades, like especially arcade bars appearing all over the place. And that's, I mean, we saw with the potential in that space, and like that we've now kind of shifted our company and our entire careers really to be focused on making games for those types of places. Like we're now doing exclusively arcade games because, I mean, mainly I think we just like doing it, and it's a really rewarding type of game design for us in particular, and but also I think we found a niche that is, that where we feel like we fit in and we're filling a need and creating something new,
I think it suits. I think it's. I don't want to speak for you, Josh, but I feel like it suits our game design style in a way that I don't know. I've made a lot of games for web and home and whatever, and I do feel like arcade kind of scratches an itch for me that those other games don't really like. It doesn't. It's not quite the same.
How would you describe the difference? The main, of course, we could be here for 2 hours, but like the main difference between this sort of game design aimed towards social places and web consoles, whatever platform that is aimed towards individual, more personal in space.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was doing a lot of web games, that's a whole other thing. But I would say like console and PC, you have all the time in the like they've theoretically already bought the game in a way, with arcade, you have very little time to kind of grab their attention and teach them how to play. There's no sense of state, right? Like I don't know anything about this player, but like as soon as I download a game for my PC or my phone or whatever, like it's already starting to gather data about me. And I'm not talking about personal data. I'm talking about like, oh, well, I did well in the last game, or I collected these many things, or all that sense of state just goes out the window. You have none of that. Every game is a brand new experience.
And does that affect like how you design the game? Are there kind of design decisions that you have to make to account for that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's just a whole different way of designing games. People say like, well, I should be able to wear hats. It's like, okay, do you want to spend 10 minutes? should everybody be waiting for you for 10 minutes for you to choose your hat? You know, that's like, whereas if it was online, it's like you can do that all in advance, and then when you show up in, there you are, kind of a thing. You're wearing your fancy hat or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah, I think a big part of it is you kind of are forced to focus just on the core gameplay, which is really what we like to focus on anyway. And I think it's the most fun part of the development. But there's very little room or time or ability to have meta game that you have that you need in a home game. That you need to be competitive commercially, at least. And yet there is, like with Killer Queen, there is quite in certain places there's quite a metagame that evolves around it, but it's through how the community builds that. Like if the community has a tournament, I mean that is metagame built around it, but it's not built into the game itself. It's the players are self-organizing that. And I think that's part of what helps build that community, right? Is you kind of have to make an effort to do those types of things. To have a league night every week, it takes effort, and it also builds real friendships.
And do you think that could be artificially manufactured, this kind of community sense, or it needs to be emergent to be real?
can you unpack that a little bit? Like, what do you mean exactly by that? Like, can you give an example?
You have this wonderful community that's appropriated this game that you made and make it theirs, and they are actually putting a lot of efforts and time in this, in the sense that they have to actually plan and organize tournaments or events, meetings, whatever. And this is something wonderful, but you said it yourself, it wasn't designed per se, and I'm wondering if it's something that could be designed, or if it needs to be to emerge naturally to even exist, like it's a condition of existence.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's no way to predict like what's going to become an esport, what's going to have community around it, whatever, but I think once you know those things, you can do a lot of things to foster that, to help people, to like give them some guidance about how to set up a league night and stuff like so. That those kind of things we do, but I don't think there would have been any way for us to know in advance that like, okay, this is going to be a thing that's going to happen, that like people are going to want to play this competitively, and they're going to want to form leagues, etc.
And just so
Did
you know,
you
one of the
provide
things...
sorry,
I was
Alistair,
just going
I'm
to
talking
say...
too much because I'm super
No.
enthusiastic. Sorry, go.
Well, I mean, it possibly leads into Tatiana's question. So, but one of the things that we've just been showing on screen there is some footage from the Killer Queen YouTube channel of one of the tournaments that you had, which is fascinating to watch. And I guess that kind of, the fact that people, will organize that and produce something that looks, very, very classy,
So
very professional.
That tournament, I'm assuming it because my tech situation today is not that great, but I'm assuming it's Bumble Bash 2, which that is actually an event that we put on.
Right.
So it is a little bit, that's like, Bumble Bash 2 is where the national championship happens. So it is bigger. It is like a little bit more produced than, let's say, Wednesday night league night, which is just people showing up and, playing games, and like they stream and stuff like that. But it's not, there's different levels of polish or, production values, like New York, for instance, has like a big tournament called Coronation. So that's going to be at a different level of, people are going to fly in for it, whatever. And that is community run. And it's a lot more produced than, let's say, our Wednesday night league nights or something like that, but again, that is that is run by the community, and even Bumble Bash, we have a lot of volunteers that help us kind of put the event on. So it is a little bit of a hybrid event.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess another sort of interesting kind of communal thing about the game is that it evolved out of what you describe on your website as a field game. So what did the field version of Killer Queen play like?
Quidditch?
Right.
No, I mean, like it was basically very similar to the video game, except obviously there was no flying, right? You couldn't, like, we don't have actual broomsticks or anything. The video game, one thing that happened during the video game was that we added the flying. We also reduced the number of players from 16 to 10, and also we added the third victory condition, which was the snail. Like that didn't exist in the original field game, but all the other elements were there. You were just like, so for instance, if you became a soldier, you just picked up a foam sword, and like that, and the mechanisms by which you became a soldier are a little bit different in the video game than they are in the field game, but it's still, this kind of caste system that is enforced in the game.
It's a lot looser too, generally, because, I mean, first of all, it's just we can't run it nearly as often, so it doesn't become as polished. But also, because of the nature of it, we're constantly tweaking rules and the layout on the fly, depending on where we are and how many people are there and what equipment they have. Like sometimes people will have like very elaborate swords and shields, and other times it's like something very simple, and or they break in the middle of the game, whatever, right? And so, I mean, a lot of it is kind of improvised, and of course, like when other people are running it, we don't have any control over that, and I don't know, who knows what they
knows what they're doing.
And I like that about it, right? It feels like a playground game in that way, as opposed to the arcade game, which is because the computer's running it, it's always exactly the same.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that. So I guess the idea that a game has taken off it's grown legs of its own, and it has a life beyond yourselves as the creators. The idea of the game as something that people can pick up and run themselves is quite nice, and certainly as an alternative controller creator myself, who is used to my game usually does not appear unless I am present to set it up. There is something nice about something that works on a community level, that can have that level of physicality to it, but that spreads on its own and grows its own wings and flies. There's something quite beautiful about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
And so the Killer Queen arcade cabinet, that supports, it's 10 players, 2 screens, is that correct? Am I right in thinking... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. It's 2 cabinets, basically. So they can be side by side or back to back, but it's basically, there's a cabinet for the gold side and a cabinet for the blue side. So 2 screens playing against each other.
I see. But am I right in thinking that this is not the only cabinet that you've made? You also made another game called Black Emperor. Was that... Could maybe you could talk a bit about where that came out of?
Yeah, the Black Emperor is very different. It's a single player game, and it's a much smaller arcade cabinet, like kind of like your typical size of what you might think of as an arcade cabinet. So yeah, that we made that game with Tomas Vicuña, who we met at the NYU Game Center, and it was his thesis project, at the Game Center, and you know, we played it at, I guess it was the student show, and fell in love with what he had, and we said, you know, let's work together, and we kind of all developed it into what you see now as the as the cabinet. And it's a very different experience than Killer Queen. It's very much just about like the feeling you get when you play it. You just feel really cool, and it's there still is a community aspect around it, even though it's single player. Like the game kind of thrives through challenging each other through the course of a night and sharing information about like how to get better at the game and things like that. As opposed to just like directly playing together as a team that you have in Killer Queen. And I think the two go side by side really well. Like we hang out at Wonderville a lot in New York, and you know, they're literally next to each other, and it's a really good companion, I think, with Killer Queen, where it's like, okay, I need kind of a change of pace, you know, or I'm waiting for my team, so I'll go and play it. You know, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid game. People seem to like it too. But it is a different crowd. You know, I feel like it is a different crowd. I feel like there's some Killer Queen players who play Black Emperor, but Black Emperor just has its own kind of audience, and it's kind of fun to watch like the difference between the two when they are side by side, and how people play and interact with Black Emperor versus how they play and interact with Killer Queen is kind of different and interesting.
How many years between the two arcades?
Not that many. I think we started working. Well,
yeah.
The
the tricky thing with Black Emperor is technically we had the first machine done, I don't know, many years ago. I don't all the dates kind of blur together, but
okay.
But then we had a lot of production challenges, particularly with supply chain issues over the last few years. So we've been struggling to get the some of the chips that we need, and like we actually had to buy a bunch of like black market chips like in the interim. That kind of got us by for a little while, and it was impossible to find them, but so we got them, and we have legit ones, and very soon we will be like back in production. So to some extent we're almost like re-releasing it now, even though it's been out for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years at least, in some extent. And you know, but with it's an interesting life cycle that we're seeing, like now that we've gotten to the arcade space. It's a much slower, longer life cycle than when we were doing downloadable games, right? Like with downloadable games, it's like you release it and it's like the first few months are like almost the entirety of the game, right? Everybody sees it and downloads it then and there because it's on the internet, of course, right? But with the arcade machines, we're finding, well, like, first of all, we can only make them so fast. And we do small runs. And then the way that they grow is we put them in an arcade, and then the arcade almost acts as a showroom, right? Because then people come into the arcade and they see it, and then they want it for their arcade or their game room at their office or whatever it is, you know? And so it has this like exponential growth where it's like the first couple years of Killer Queen, like we weren't even intending it to be a commercial product. And then as more and more people started seeing it, it would grow faster and faster. And so I think I'm hoping with Black Emperor, we're starting to get to that point where the curve can grow because we can actually finally accommodate it.
We can actually make them.
Yeah. And so we do have another arcade machine that we are just finishing up. I think like Nick just put the finishing touches on the actual cabinetry. for a game called Zombies, a Killer Queen remix, which is a single player spin-off we did of Killer Queen. That we did it as a Steam game in 2020 when we couldn't really be working on a 10-player, in-person game. And so we just made an arcade cabinet for it, and we're about to release that. So you can play it on Steam right now if you want to check it out. Yeah.
Amazing.
And you can check the locations of Killer Queens on the website Killer Queen Arcade.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
some. We have a map, and it has all the Killer Queen and Black Emperor locations. Well, I mean, we try to keep it up to date, but it's impossible for it to be completely accurate in a way.
It was enough for me to find the one at 2-Bit Circus. So. It's actually
that's a great place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that is about all we've got time for. But this has been a fascinating conversation, and it's been really interesting to hear about the game and how it's evolved, and all things that have gone into making it what it is. One thing that I think our audience would really like to know about is, what are you going to be bringing to Night Games?
Oh, we're bringing Killer Queen.
Excellent. In what form? In what form are we going to see Killer Queen?
It's going to be the arcade. It's going to be the arcade game. I believe Red Bull is going to be supplying their cabinet.
Fantastic.
Or one of their cabinets. Yeah.
Yep.
And are you going to be there yourselves in person?
We will.
We will, and I think we're going to be doing like a challenge the developers event.
We are?
Yeah, so come find us and challenge us.
Oh
God.
Nick does not seem entirely ready to be challenged, or maybe this is your plan. This is your trick.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Well,
thank you
very
so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Great to see you.
And yes,
and I hope to invite you on a full hour-long interview one day for Beyond Screen.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Sure. Are you guys going to actually be at Night Games?
So, unfortunately, not in person, but I will be there in my I will be there in digital form on a 12-foot tall plasma screen, interacting with the audience. About it. So look forward to seeing me there in that form. You can you'll be able to message me terrible, awful things for me to put on a big canvas.
Okay, cool.
It doesn't have to be awful things. It can be nice things as well. But I just know what audiences are like.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you guys.
Lovely to meet you too. Have yourselves a great evening.
You too.
You too. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
And we will be back very shortly with our next guest. So stick around on this channel and stay tuned. All right, see you in a few minutes. Hello, we are back. Thank you so much, Josh and Nick, for joining us. Our next guest is Jason Morningstar. Jason is the creator of Desperation, which won the Tabletop Award at this year's festival. Jason and his company Bully Pulpit Games may be familiar names already to some of you, as they are the creators of role-playing game Fiasco. Desperation is a chilling card game of survival, which sees you collectively role-playing a cast of characters in a card-driven tale, as its cast gets whittled down by the elements or by one another. And to give you a feel of the game, we have the trailer, so let's have a little look. This is Desperation.
I don't think it
Oh. Okay, sorry, thank
can see
you.
the trailer.
Aha!
That's why I
Apologies for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have spoken over the video, but I can see that people are only hearing the sound, which is
Thank you very
teasing.
much. They're seeing it
That's
now. Cheers.
teasing. Okay.
Jason, welcome to the stream. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well, Alistair. It's nice to meet you. Hi, Tatiana.
Hi. So congrats for the award.
Thank you. I'm thrilled. I'm so proud of this game, and it was such a weird, kind of a risky thing to publish that I'm glad it's being recognized.
Okay, why? I mean, it's so teasing. What was hard about that?
Well, it's just it's an unusual pitch. It's a difficult game to convince people they want to play. And it's a weird farm factor. So it's a role-playing game, but it comes in a couple of decks of cards. So there are a lot of barriers to overcome between being excited about it and having someone actually engage with it, that are sort of different barriers than most tabletop role-playing games.
I mean, it's a really wonderful game. I was fortunate enough to get to play it with my brother a couple of weeks ago, and we really got into it. We played the Isabel storyline, and it was just wonderful, like, you know, kind of crafting this story together, but also there is a certain level of the story that is out of our control. And it was this beautiful kind of, you know, weaving of having creative control over it and also having to cede creative control of it. That was just, it was a beautiful place to kind of to play around in.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the thing that's so exciting to me about it is that I feel like it's something that games aren't really, or tabletop role-playing games aren't really doing right now. And I was so interested to explore what feels like actually a new technique. The idea that you don't get to decide what your characters say, you just get to decide who says it, which really kind of flips the script in terms of character agency, and to a degree, like you were describing, player agency as well. So yeah, I'm glad that resonated with you and your brother.
And so, just to sort of give the audience a feel for, you know, what the game is like and how it plays out, you know, maybe could you give us a little brief rundown of how things play out in the game?
Oh yeah, for sure. So Desperation is an engine, and then there are different scenarios as you can play with it. It ships with Dead House and the Isabel, and those two are sort of thematically linked. They both take place in the 1880s. One of them is during a blizzard in Kansas, and you're the residents of a town called Neola, Kansas, and the other one is aboard a gaff-rigged schooner in the Gulf of Alaska called the Isabel. And this is all sort of based on history. These things actually happened. There was a huge blizzard, and this town was stocked in and abandoned for a long time. And the Isabel did sink, and some of the people survived and some of them didn't. So like there's a little bit of historical resonance to it, but for the most part, you're creating your own tale about what happens. And the way the game works is that you proceed in time from, in the case of Dead House, it's from the autumn to winter, and then winter doesn't end when it's supposed to. And so the third part of the game isn't more winter, it's hell. And your characters are really going to suffer. Things are going to amplify and intensify, and people are going to kind of become unhinged as that winter doesn't end. And with the Isabel, it's a shipwreck narrative. So you start out on a ship in a storm, and then you're in small boats because the ship is going to sink. And then some of you are going to make it to a beach somewhere on the forbidding coastline of Alaska. And it's going to go bad. And people are going to die due to the environment or due to each other in equal measure. And at the end, some may survive and some may not. When you played, how many survivors were there?
We had one survivor at the end.
Yeah. It's tuned so there's a theoretical range of 0 to 5, really.
Right.
But it's tuned so that usually there's one or two, depending on how you play it, and the sort of luck of the draw, because the cards will vary slightly from game to game as well.
The way you speak about Desperation and entangled narrative design and game system design is quite fascinating to me. I'm discovering your work right now a lot, because this interview, wasn't planned that way. And that's fascinating that you speak of the game system and probabilities and statistic, but all with a lot of consistency with narrative design. And it feels almost like, maybe I'm totally wrong, but it feels almost like a very evolved form of ergodic literature. I don't know how you pronounce that in English. Ergodic, ERGODIC, like House of Leaves, etc. Is that something that was inspiring for you, or you really come from the game and literature was really added after that?
Yeah, my influences come from a lot of different places. I'm inspired by a lot of things. In this case, the core of the game came out of reading about human cognition. And so from a very different point of view, not a sort of literature inspired point, but almost a science inspired point, where I was thinking about the way that when you play, well, when you engage with any game, but specifically in tabletop role playing, which is really my focus at the tabletop and live action analog play, right? Yeah, things will happen that seem like magic, that everybody at the table or everybody in the room knows what's supposed to happen, and when it does, it feels like magic. And I was like, well, what is that? Why does that happen? And it turns out that is just it's a quirk of the way that our brains are built, right? We're built to match patterns even where no patterns exist, and that's called apophenia. And if you do it, you can be very intentional about it. And so my thinking was, I want to make a game that leverages this as hard as it can. I want to make a game where it's going to push as hard as it can on apophenia, so that every choice you make has that potential to feel like spooky magic. Because in the case of these games, because who should be talking. There'll be text that you have to read, and it's going to say something, and it might be something horrible. It might be, I couldn't take it anymore, and I killed him. I just laid him out and killed him. And at a particular juncture in the game, it may be that you both know intuitively who's saying that, but also who they killed. Sometimes that's really obvious. And that's, our pattern matching kind of happening on the fly.
That's
Do you think that our ability to infer these informations gives a sort of reality, a sense of reality to the story and the fiction, etc.?
100%. Yeah, for sure.
That's
But because you're taking ownership of it, you have agency within it, but that agency is not around the sort of unfolding narrative. Stuff's going to happen, but you get to guide it based on factors that are pretty unusual for this kind of a game.
Sorry, Alistair, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. You're like more than welcome. Like it was just interesting hearing what you say about these kind of moments that feel like magic, because I certainly experienced those playing with my brother. And what was interesting about that is, that sense that, because a lot the cards, you choose which character is speaking on which card, and then you have the opportunity to flesh that out with a bit of your own, dialogue to go with it. And there were some things that emerge where it was really obvious who it should be because of the text that was written on their previous cards, or, it felt right for the picture or something. And then there were some that felt just right because of bits of story that we'd added ourselves.
Yeah.
And that was spooky.
Right. That's the good stuff. That's what I was really aiming for people to experience, because you're building on these things. You're making decisions about who these people are. And those decisions aren't necessarily based on information you're given. Yes, they're based on the images on the cards. You can look at, here's Henry Hetzel. Let's look at, can I get it to focus
Henry
on
Hetzel's looking a bit blurry. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Is he, where'd he go? Well, maybe not. I don't know what's wrong with my camera. Henry Hetzel is a sad old man, and the picture of him shows him sort of hunched over and, wringing his hands. And that tells you something about who he might be, but you as a player get to decide that. In one game, he'll be like an evil miser. And in another game, he'll be like a frail but very gentle soul who loves his family. And it'll always be different. But when you get to the point where, there's going to be something happens, if it's Henry Hetzel, you'll know it's supposed to be Henry Hetzel. I think that's delightful to me, and I'm really glad that you experienced that.
Another thing I'm quite interested in is the way that you deal with the kind of, there is a performance aspect to playing the game, and that part of it that, in that thing of you play a card and you assign it to someone, but you also have the opportunity to add a bit of your own dialogue yourself. And I guess, I expect different players approach that differently. Do you see different kind of patterns emerge from people who flesh out a lot and people who flesh out very little?
Yeah, something else I'm really proud of, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that the game degrades gracefully. So if you're playing with people who are very uncomfortable or new to role-playing, you can play a card and say, this is Henry Hetzel talking. And then you read the card and you're done. That's all you have to do to make the game work. And if you have a table full of people who are comfortable doing that, the game will still work. You'll still tell an interesting story together, and it'll be completely functional. The other end of that are, people who want to chew the scenery and are very dramatic and are framing scenes together between characters and getting, going way overboard with the dramatic presentation of it and performance of it. And that's great too. And I think those two extremes are really possible in a lot of games. But in Desperation, they also work well together. As long as that core information is transmitted, this is a piece of dialogue, this is who's saying it, whatever level you want to contribute to it, whatever your table sort of stabilizes around is going to work great. And that, I think, is super cool. I'm really excited about that as well. And I've seen that whole range. I've played it with people who are not really role-playing game enthusiasts, who really lean more toward that end of it, where they'll look at the card, and be like, okay, well, I'm going to read it, and I think this was Velma Hetzel, and then we move on, because that tells us something. And then I've also, of course, played it with people who really they want to dive into it and be, very dramatic, and that works too. That's very fun.
Have you ever?
Why did you? Yeah,
Tatiana, no,
sorry.
please.
Why did you choose the folk horror genre? It's one of my favorites, especially when it comes to horror. But what was in it that was enabling new stuff to happen? I assume, I have an idea, of course, that the fantastical aspect was a way to bring magic to an ordinary situation, and it was a fertile soil to build what you wanted to build. But maybe you had in mind other reasons to choose this genre, especially because your previous game was a heist genre, if I'm
Yeah, sure. So these are horror stories, right? They're sort of tales that they're grounded in a sort of degenerative horror where things are going bad and they're not going to get any better. And you're really sort of grinding it out to the end to sort of see who survives. I was drawn to this by the things that inspired me. So I'm very interested in different pieces of history, and this time period is one that I sort of return to again and again. So there are lots of stories that are very similar to this that are just historical, that just happened, like the Peshtigo fire, where like all of Wisconsin burned down, or the Great Blizzard of 1888, or the Children's Blizzard of 1882, I think, where just
what?
horrible. Oh yeah, the Children's Blizzard. Look it up; it's good. Like horrible things that happened, particularly in the sort of late Victorian era. There's just this darkness around that time period and the way that it's reported that really appealed to me. And all of the cards are kind of written from that perspective of me having absorbed a lot of that literature and news articles and things and books from that time. So it was just a right mix. If Desperation does well and I get to make more scenarios for it, it's much more diverse. There's lots of ways to go. I would love to do survival horror in a different kind of genre. I'd like to do science fiction things. Someone suggested this would be a great engine for Regency romance, where instead of death, it's rejecting suitors, and that totally works. I could totally see it working. So I think it's got some flexibility to how it's presented.
And so in the kind of creation process, like what did the early versions of this game look like?
It's well, I started with Dead House, so there's two scenarios that ship with the game, and I built the first one top to bottom before I even started on the second one. And I knew kind of what I wanted it to be. I wanted you to be building a map collaboratively, creating a relationship map collaboratively, and then taking that thing that you had created and slowly destroying it. I knew that I wanted to leverage apophenia. I wanted to use pattern matching to make it seem spooky. And so something that I often do in my design practice is once I've set those things in stone, I've made those decisions, then I just reject things that don't work, that don't, like there are a lot of really cool things that this game could have done, but those things were not what I was trying to do. And they got put in the drawer, in the bits drawer for some other project, until it was just exactly only things that met the brief. And the brief was very, very narrow. And I often design that way, and it seems to work for me.
How long did it took from, let's say when you started really working on the idea to the release?
Yeah, I think the core of the game was done in 6 months, and then in another 6 months, it had been play tested in a pretty high volume situation very successfully, and we were very excited about it and ready to move forward. And that was December of 2019. So we got a little bit sidetracked, unfortunately, by I don't know what, something happened, sort of derailed our plans. But about, I would say, like a year, and then we had plenty of time to refine it because we couldn't really bring it to a finished state for a couple of years.
Okay, so a year, and then
Maybe.
some more because of also the context, etc. Okay.
Yeah, we got to a point where we wanted to play test it face to face more, and that just wasn't going to happen. Supply chains fell apart. There were a lot of speed bumps that prevented us from like getting the finished version of the game.
Were you able to piggyback on what you did with Fiasco? Or
Yeah, this in terms of the design focus and the game's themes and affordances, it has nothing to do with Fiasco. It's quite different. Um, in terms of production, it's a game that the second edition of Fiasco is also a card-based game, a card-based tabletop role-playing game. So we had learned a little bit about how to produce that, and there are some similarities in that way. But the games really don't. They're doing very different things.
Yeah, more on the practical, very practical
Yeah.
side of production.
Yeah, we'd certainly learned how to make a role-playing game that uses cards that ships in a box. That was, and that was new for us. You know, we
Yeah.
hadn't really done that before.
And that's terrifying for me as an Alt Control designer working with events, because we don't have to actually sell people stuff. We can fix them on
Yeah.
site. So yeah,
We don't have that luxury. Like, what's in the box is what you get, and if there's an error, then that error will be there for however many copies we printed. Yeah, it's.
Are you stressed before the final check because
100%.
of that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely nerve-wracking, and I can't look at the product. Like when the game shows up, I just have to be like, that's great. I'm going to put it on my shelf. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to see it, because it's very common to find an error, you know, to find a typo or a spelling error, or there's all kinds of things that can happen that are very minor that no one else is going to notice, or that we can easily correct with errata or whatever. But you'll always find one, and it just kills me. So I stay away from it for a while.
Oh God, I can imagine that must be crushing to spot like that, you know. So, yeah. Oh God, sends a chill down my spine just thinking about that. I mean, maybe that could be a theme for another for a next setting.
Yep. Yeah. Print production. It's genuinely terrifying.
So we are running unfortunately towards the end of the session, but I do have a couple of questions. One is, you know, if people are watching and they're thinking about starting out making their first card games or their first role-playing games, how would you suggest they go about, you know, starting out on that?
That's a great question. And what I always suggest is to find a community of practice, people that are doing what you're doing in the way that you're kind of doing it, that you can be a part of. You can help other people build their games, and then without really any expectation of reciprocity, hope that they will help you with yours. And that's everything from advice about, you know, the nuts and bolts of printing and production and distribution, but also design things. And those communities are all over the place, and you just need to kind of find one that resonates with you, that has people in it that you like. And I think Indiecade is a great place to start with that. You know, there's lots of people there doing interesting things. All the people who are doing tabletop stuff there would be happy to talk, I'm sure, about the places where they find productive conversation and community. Much of that is happening on Discord now. But there's also communities on, you know, Blue Sky, where people are talking back and forth, or Facebook, or whatever, your Reddit, even places that you know, have the people that are doing what you're doing that you like and want to help.
Brilliant. And then I guess my next question is to do with Night Games itself. Will you be there in person?
Sadly, I will not. I live a long way away from Los Angeles, but Desperation will be there, and two people who are infinitely more qualified than me to be facilitating the game will also be there. So Janaya Kemper and Eric Mersman, who are dear friends of mine, know the game backwards and forwards, and are local, will both be there running one or maybe even two tables at the same time. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to play if you're interested in Desperation at Night Games. There'll be at least 2 games going on, maybe as many as 4.
Fantastic. Well, I have to say, as someone who's played it, I can absolutely wholeheartedly recommend it to our audience. It's really good. And of course, the opportunity, you know, because, you know, you can play with the friends you come with. You might even find yourself playing with strangers. I'd love to see what it's like to play in a bigger group, or, you know, playing in a duo was really interesting. Like the one-on-one conversations my brother and I had were really interesting. And the way that we both kind of ended up piloting a lot of the the characters, and I'd be keen to see how does that change in big groups. So, like, yeah, this is a great opportunity. Everyone, if you're going to night games, and you should be, go over, play Desperation, give it a go. You're gonna have a, I think possibly a bit of a, the more harrowing end of a great time, but a great time nonetheless.
Type 2 fun.
Yes.
You'll have some Type 2 fun.
Jason, is there anything or anyone you'd like to shout out before you head off?
Oh man, I guess the only thing I would say, and I'm contractually obligated to say this, is that if you like this kind of game, or if you like the games that I make, we just started kickstarting a expansion to our game, Starcrossed, today, 1 hour ago. So
Wow.
Starcrossed Love Letters is going strong. Go check it out on BackerKit, I guess, and it's brilliant. It's good stuff. You'll like it.
Well, Jason, thank you very much for coming along, and this has been a fantastic conversation. It's been absolutely fascinating to hear about the game.
Oh, thank you.
We are going to move on now. We're going to bring in our next guest. So, audience, please do stick around here on the IndieCade channel, and we shall see you all very soon. Thank you very much, Jason. Have yourself a
Thank you,
wonderful
Jason.
evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, and we are back. Welcome back, everyone. How are you all doing? We have another guest for you this evening. Our next guest is the wonderful Robin Baumgarten, who is calling in from a very special location, and you're going to see that very shortly. But first, let's take a look at some of his work. This is a project that is going to be at Night Games this Friday and Saturday, and it is called The Wobble Sphere. Let's welcome to the stream our third guest for the night. It is the wonderful Robin Baumgarten. Welcome to the stream, Robin. How are you doing?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me again. Yeah, I'm good. Doing well and keeping busy here.
At what time is it where you are?
It is just 1 p.m., so just after lunchtime here. So because I'm in San Francisco right now, and maybe you can kind of tell already in the back, this is a big place. This is the Exploratorium in San Francisco. It's a cool tech science art museum geared towards kids mostly. And yeah, I'm here to set up things, and I'm going to talk about it today a little bit and show you kind of behind the scenes a little bit. It's still very much in the setup. Maybe you can hear like construction noises in the background. I don't know.
A little.
Yeah. But yeah, that's where I am.
That's awesome, because we will be able to see you set up something, and you have a really busy schedule because tomorrow morning you will be flying to LA to set up Wobble Sphere at Night Games. At what time is your flight, by the way?
The flight is in the morning, so it's a 10 a.m. flight here. But that's easy with a jet lag. We're still waking up like 5 a.m. So it's no problem. And then so we're flying over, heading downtown and setting up, and then basically waiting for the evening. There's still a little bit of work I have to do for the Wobble Sphere itself, because I made a new one. So hopefully that gets all done in time.
Right.
But yeah, it's always the fun challenge to get everything ready and see if it survives all those flights. But I'm optimistic.
So how do you? I mean, speaking of flights, how do you transport this? Does the sphere just go in the luggage, fully fitted, and wrapped in bubble wrap, or do you break it to bits?
No, it's broken into bits. So it's broken into little petals. So the sphere is, I don't know if you've seen it in the video. It's like a football, right? So it has like pentagons surrounded by hexagons, and so there's like 12 of those pentagons, and that's like how these kind of things are tiled. And yeah, I have like these chunks that I then connect, and it's all 3D printed in the inside. Sadly, I don't have it right here, so otherwise I could show you a bit. It's in the hotel room right now.
All right.
Um,
People
but I-
can see the video. We have the video showing the wobble sphere as you're talking.
Exactly. And so it's that is it's like a spherical version of works I've done before. In fact, I've got one right here. I don't know. It's I can show you in a now
do.
or in a little
Please
bit. I don't know.
do.
Yeah, go for
Yes.
it.
So let me turn around the camera. And so here, this is Quantum Jungle, and that's a project I've been working on for the last couple of years. And it's a big installation. So it is like you can see it's like 720 springs, and they're all touch sensitive. So if you touch them, you know, like they light up, and it's a very colorful pattern. And
then it's
yeah.
called Quantum Jungle because the interactions between the LEDs, the lights, is really like, I don't know how it's made. It reminds me of reaction diffusion, maybe something.
Yeah, so
of
so
this
you can
vibe,
see actually
yeah.
right now this kind of pattern, this expanding cloud. This is a modeled using a quantum algorithm. So it's modeled using Schrodinger's equation, and perhaps you've heard of Schrodinger's cat, which is like dead and alive at the same time. This is like here the particle is one particle in all those positions at the same time, and then when you open the box, you know only one state is left, and that's the same here. When you touch it again, it'll collapse, and it's only in one spot. So that's kind of the scientific aspect of it. And I made this together with the university. So they wanted to visualize some physical aspects. And I had, maybe some of you know the Wobble Garden, which was at a maze a while back, and at GDC. It's a much smaller version of this. And I was quite happy that I got funding basically from this university and from the EU to make this huge version. And now I'm building my own versions that I show around in different places around the world. So it's really cool. And I'm quite happy how it turned out. And yeah, so this is basically almost done with the setup. You can see maybe down here, there's a few springs missing on the bottom. And this is because I counted wrong. And I'm missing 18 springs. It's a bit annoying. So I have them express shipped from Berlin. Hopefully they arrive in the next 3 days before the opening. But you know, it's not super obvious. So if I not told you, maybe you wouldn't even seen it.
No,
So
I haven't
even if they
seen it
don't arrive
before.
just in time, it's gonna be fun and fine. But yes,
Yeah, and
so that's
it's massive. So yeah, it's drowned in the
Yeah,
mass.
exactly.
So that's okay. And so is the wobble sphere following the same properties of interaction between lights and the Schrodinger's algorithm equation?
no,
Sorry.
so no. So the Wobble Sphere has this, like, in a way similar hardware in that it has springs that you can touch with these rings around it. But no, that is going to be more playful, like a little game that I'm kind of I'm still developing it a little bit, but I have some ideas for like little particles floating around. So it's kind of a cooperative experience. And that's that's still an ongoing project. So I'm still kind of figuring out what works well on it, what interactions does it provide, you know, and how can I kind of make the most out of the hardware.
Yeah, so you're usually working that way. I remember for Wobble Garden, the ancestor of Quantum Jungle, let's say, that you were already also looking for gameplays that would benefit the most from the device you made. So from what I understand, you usually make the device first and then try to play around with it, see the toy in it, and then build a game on this toy, right?
That's right. Yes, exactly. So yeah, with Wobble Garden, I had also, especially in the earlier version, like a lot of little different experiments that I played around with. In the end, I think I like this kind of finger twister the most, where each player had a color, and then you needed to touch all springs of that color. And it was like this nice mix of human to machine and human to human interaction. It worked really well, and I feel like something similar could work for the Sphere as well. Although because you don't see the whole thing at the same time, it is perhaps a bit more about information. Like another player sees what happens on the other side. So that's still I still need to kind of think about that and kind of jam with that and figure out
It's
what
still brewing. Yeah.
exactly. So we'll see exactly what happens at night games. And for Amaze, there was only like the Amaze last year. That was like this 1 day Amaze festival. I had a competitive little mini game where people needed to kind of quickly slap certain colors, and it was a bit too chaotic, and also it kind of almost damaged the Sphere a bit. So now I'm thinking something a bit calmer and cooperative. So we'll see. So that's always like this kind of nice feedback between showing something and then going back to the drawing board, iterating until you arrive at something that works.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating process, and I mean, one thing that is just kind of blowing my mind with your work at the moment is just the ever increasing scale of it. I mean, I remember, talking about the line wobbler, back in the day, and you talked about using a Teensy instead of an Arduino because it had a bit more memory in it, could address more LEDs, and that. I mean, you must be working with very different hardware now, or does a Teensy still address the, 72,000 or however many it is LEDs that you're working with now?
Yeah. So, well, in fact, I mean, the hardware keeps pace as well. So right now, the new Teensy, for example, is the Teensy 4. And actually, I use that in the Quantum Jungle. And that is really well suited to run like that many pixels. It's also like has a network connection now. So I can, because the game itself, or like the installation itself is running on a computer. I'll show you also the screen, perhaps. I mean, it's just like a little debug screen. So you see like there is like some kind of command window running, and if I touch it here, it'll show, there was the touch event, and then there's a little interface I wrote. I mean, there's not much happening here right now. All the visualizations are switched off, so the performance is all in the live version. But
oh my god, could you control it in real time from this little interface you made
you could, although I think I disabled most of that now. I don't know if no, at some point you could spawn little particles, but not right now. As you can see, it little updates a little bit with the simulation, but it's actually quite tricky because the colors here are much different from the colors when they're on LEDs. So they're much brighter here, and here it's all almost black.
Yeah.
It's actually the color mapping is quite tricky to figure out cool colors. But anyway, so it does run on a computer, and then the computer sends all the data to two Arduinos that sit behind this wall. And then maybe I can also show you, I don't know if it's too dark to see. Maybe it's fine. So
yeah, we can see.
I mean, there is some stuff you can see here, but for example, here on this side, there is a small board that basically collects the touch data, and that is then sent towards the center. And there is the Arduinos that then send it on. And but yeah, that's how it's kind of set up, and then it sits on these kind of metal rails. It's always tricky for me actually to figure out how to set it up or how to mount it on a wall, because I'm not a kind of engineer that knows these things. So it's like each time I build this, I change how it's mounted on the wall, and it's tricky to have it quick and accurate, but also not permanent. So I could take it down. But it's always tricky.
Yeah, I was asking for the real-time control because it's begging to be performative with maybe one player controlling stuff from the computer or an interface and other players playing on the actual jungle.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that could be cool. It's almost like the Wii U, where you have one player has like a little computer device. I haven't really thought about this. Right now, I've only focused on the device itself because it's where my
No,
focus
but
was.
yeah, I
But
won't take time off the stream to start game designing with you, but we can talk about this if you'd like to make a sort of performative type of games in the future. Maybe we should talk to the Amaze Festival. And
yeah.
Anyway, that's not like a personal call. We are actually streaming, so let's get back to the Wobble Sphere that you are showing. So do you plan on trying to experiment with other forms? You started with a simple line with Line Wobbler, and then a bigger surface with Wobble Garden, and then a giant surface with Quantum Jungle, and then a sphere. Do you plan on trying to experiment with other forms?
Yeah, I mean, so it's an interesting question, and I have some interesting ideas on how to make a kind of like an organic general surface that I can populate with. I don't know if it's still going to be springs, but probably and LEDs, and then so using some kind of procedural generation of these surfaces, because the tricky part is like how to get it stable, how to get the circuit boards the right size, right? But I'm kind of curious to see if it's possible to do it, and how it would work from an engineering perspective, right? So that could be quite interesting as well. It's like because also already with the this is quite a small step, I feel, from the Wobble Sphere, because that is already small flat surfaces on a 3D printed kind of structure that holds everything together. And here it's all very symmetric, so this happens to be a sphere. But it might as well be any other kind of organic looking structure. Could even be...
Remember this shape-shifting table from the MIT Media Lab a few years ago? Like the table is made of different cubes that are, rectangles that are able to move, but it's still, so it can be organic, but still really stable. I could see something like this being like awesome. Anyway.
That could, no, exactly. That could be quite cool. And then, well, I mean, I always have like lots of ideas, and we'll see which ones of those really will see the day of light, the light of day. But it might be interesting also to completely forego any surfaces, so just have springs or any. Well, I mean, right now I'm still in my spring period, having them go through the space, like anchored on the roof, ceiling, walls, and so just kind of spanning through the whole room. And then it's an interesting challenge again. How do you measure? How do you touch them? How do you also prevent, in that case, like people pulling back too far and snapping it into other people's faces? But that's going to be an interesting challenge. But yeah, that's that could be an interesting way to also go more into 3D and like having it where people can go through it, the installation, right? Especially when I introduced the Wobble Garden, the early photos I took were really close up, like from the side, and it looked very alien, like the springs were towers. And sometimes when people saw it in real life, they say, "Oh, this is actually tiny. I thought you can walk through it," and like it's like this massive thing. So it could be interesting to build something which is more human scale, where people can walk through. But again, that's also very tricky to do.
Inside the Wobble Sphere.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be like an inside-out sphere. I mean, the idea for the Wobble Sphere came originally from when I had the Wobble Garden, and we took one of those, these mini planet photos. Like you have like a 360 camera, and then it it kind of transforms the photo in such a way that everything looks like it's on a tiny planet. And then with the springs on it, it looked almost like, it looked like a sphere. And I said, oh, this could be a sphere, and it could be kind of cool. And then if you do the opposite, it's like it's kind of like a cave, like a wobble cave. But yes, so the sphere isn't the only form it could be. It could also be different sizes, right? So the geometry for these objects, I mean, the geometry in a way is fairly simple. But it's also quite complex, to get the exact measurements and figuring out, okay, how do they fit together in the end? And I was lucky to find a good online resource for all kinds of these polyhedrons, what they call, with like, pentagons with hexagons around, and then there's like different ways to
Yeah.
tile a sphere and different
Because-
amounts of hexagons in between the pentagons. But apparently, it's always 12 pentagons. I don't know how this math works out. It's kind of magic.
Yeah, you
but,
didn't choose the easiest route by not taking a platonic solid as a shape. So yeah, it's harder
Yeah,
to
I think it's
construct. Yeah.
exactly. It's like an extended platonic shape. I think, right? It starts with a dodecahedron, which is made out of 12 pentagons, right?
Mm.
But then it turns out you can insert hexagons in between those, and you can do it also several times to increase the volume of the sphere, basically, or the number of faces.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I only saw it online, and I was like looking at
Yeah, obviously.
interesting.
You got to
getting
learn it at
inspired
some point.
by the
You are not
mathematicians.
born
Yeah.
with this knowledge.
I am just
Yeah, yeah,
really
exactly.
looking forward to the future where there's a second moon up in the sky and it's the wobble moon and it's covered in springs and you can fly a little spaceship up to the wobble moon and make patterns in the night sky.
Yeah, that sounds good. Wobble world,
Yeah.
take over everything.
But let's start
Um,
with the wobble cave. Yeah.
That sounds good.
So
Yeah, I
this,
mean, so-
yeah,
Yeah.
oh no, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, but just saying, like, with because you mentioned also, Alistair, that there is like definitely has been this trend to make things a little bit bigger. But it was more like an experiment, and I'm also not, bound to it. It's just like thinking, okay, the Wobble Garden was a small experiment. Does it get better if it's bigger? And it's not always a given that it gets better. So it's like an experiment, and if it works, fine. For the Wobble Garden, it worked out well. The Quantum Jungle. But I don't know if it's necessarily a better experience. It's just like a slightly different, and in a way, it's successful because museums like these kind of big spectacles. These Instagram colorful things. But I don't know if it makes better art per se, right? I'm right now. I like doing it because I like installing it at cool places and traveling with it. But from a perspective from my side, as like maybe as a game designer or as an interaction designer, it is very much the same object. It's just like much more work to assemble and maintain.
That's interesting. See, I would disagree. I mean, having seen it, I was lucky enough to see it in person in Berlin this summer, and there is something very special about being able to get that close to it, that it occupies almost your entire field of view, and you've just got nothing but these swirling patterns. And there is something about the swirling patterns that, because as you see the pixels, the dots and things moving around, you realize they are following these swirling patterns and things. And when you are far enough away that you can't see the individual pixels, but you can still see the shimmering swirling effect, there is something hypnotic about that. There is something otherworldly about that. So I mean, genuinely, I think it does gain something very special from the scale that, that turns it into something kind of transcendent, turns it into this kind of otherworldly experience.
All right, yeah. Well, yeah, then if you say so, then I need to make the Wobble room and then the Wobble, I don't know, city.
I'm just trying to create more work for you.
Yes. Well, I mean, as long as there's places willing to show it, and so that I can kind of basically fund this addiction to ever increasing amounts of springs, I'm not opposed to it. And there's also obviously there's always new interactions coming with different scales or different shapes. Like with the Quantum Jungle, it's much easier to have several people interact with it at once. Same with the Wobble Sphere. There's like much more surface space and like different angles to it. So it's definitely interesting especially going from Line Wobbler, for example, which is definitely a very single player experience, at least for the player. I mean, it's nice to watch, but for the interactive part, there's now the possibility to have more people interact at once, which also makes it much more complex to create games, for example, that would work on all those different scales, right? But that's it's an interesting challenge for sure.
And in terms of like mounting the thing, obviously it's been quite a job to put that together up on the wall at the Exploratorium. How long's that taken you?
It's not too bad. I mean, here it's also really cool because this place is very professional, right? So there's a lot of people that are helping here and that are kind of working full time, setting up these things, and also by the virtue of being like this kind of children place, things break here all the time, and they have this massive wood workshop and metal workshop, and like all these machines in-house, and I'm quite envious of all these machines actually. Like, and they do internships here as well, or kind of residencies. So it's like kind of maybe I should be here for a while. But so actually here was like super easy, and well, I mean, not super easy in terms of it's still a lot of work, but here there's a lot of people saying, okay, I need these beams that like exactly 374 millimeters apart, and then some guy goes, oh yeah, no problem, I'll do this, and it's done 2 hours later. So it's really cool. And maybe I can show you also a bit, because right now they're also setting up line wobblers, which I also have here.
Oh.
Yeah, so there is the standard 5-meter line wobbler. That's the one I've shown like a lot, and that's like the normal one,
Yeah, the original.
But also here we have a 30-meter version that we're building. So that's gonna start from here. You can see still this is all the strips. The LED density is a bit lower, so I use these classic 60 LEDs per meter strips for that. But it starts here and then goes up here to the wall, to this beam, and then I don't know if you can see it well. There's like wooden bars that hang there. It's not well illuminated now.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. When you move, we can see it.
It goes there, along, and then around here to this pillar again. And so that's going to be installed hopefully tonight. It's always tricky because you need to wait until the museum is closed, because obviously this is like a public space here, not fenced off, so we can't go up there. But that's also a super big version of line wobblers. And this one, it actually does not play better than the small version, but it's kind of fun to have it go into the space and using also this the architectural space of the hall, which is quite fun. But yeah, you can see like super professional equipment here with like these I don't know what they're called, cherry pickers. These are big frames, and then like the design documents that they made for this, like, oh yeah, everything is like exactly measured out and drawn with professional drawings. It's quite cool to have this.
Yeah, it's quite far from a Fab Lab. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, in that sense, it was quite nice to build it here and have it here, and I'm also kind of confident that they can kind of maintain it quite well. When it breaks, or if it breaks, probably when. They have been constantly warning me, saying, yeah, this is the best stress test you can get. Kids say they go wild here. And in fact, I've changed the spring design. I don't know if you noticed for these springs, they're like there's like these
oh yeah, they're like straight. They are not.
Yeah, they're like custom designed springs now. They're 2-millimeter steel springs, but I think they're still too weak. So like people probably kind of might pull them. So now like invite pulling more. They're quieter, these ones. But we'll see. So maybe that needs to be revised for the next version again. But it's cool to see how long it's gonna survive, and how it's gonna fare.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's amazing to see that you are still iterating on finding the perfect spring.
It's an ongoing process. Yeah, it's like I know like several spring factories that kind of make these, and figuring out the best kind of ratio of different diameters and whatnot. It's an ongoing project, and I'm still not tired of it. So it's like I kind of wanna see how far you can kind of take this. So it's cool.
It's gonna be the name of your biography in the future. I'm looking for the perfect spring.
Oh well,
could be, yes.
Robin, this has been absolutely fantastic, but I am afraid we are running out of time now. So is there anything you'd like to tell the audience about before we head off? And maybe tell, what can they expect to see at Night Games? That's an important one.
Yeah, so I'll bring the Wobblesphere. It's a brand new one, so hopefully with not too many bugs, but I'll be there showing it, so you can totally come by and chat to me, and then we can I can show you what's on it, basically what's running on it, how it works, and hopefully it's going to be a fun event. Yeah, I'm looking forward to being in LA at the Music Center. So it's going to be quite exciting.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Robin. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the channel. We are nearing the end of the show, so what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our final guest very, very briefly. The final guest is a familiar face to some of you. It's myself, because I'll be showing stuff at Night Games as well. So we're just going to head off, do a quick changeover for that. But thank you so much once again, Robin, for speaking to us. And thank you for showing us, like your work so close up. It's been an absolute delight, a privilege to get to see it like that.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Yeah, it's always fun to show you guys, to show interested people what I'm working on, how this stuff works. So yeah, pleasure's mine.
Good. Best of luck with all the stuff you have to do in 2 days and your very busy schedule. I hope that Night Games will be a quite relaxing time for you. You'll deserve
I hope so too. Yes, it'll be fun.
All right.
All right.
See you again soon,
Bye.
Robin. Bye.
Bye.
The rules, and so do I. Officer? It still irks him. Nixon Richard. Or the rules, and so do I. Officer. It still irks him. Nixon reaction. Or the rules, and so do I, officer. It still irks him. Nixon reaction. Or and hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us and all our guests. Thank you to all our guests this evening. We've had Josh and Nick from Bumble Bear Games showing us Killer Queen.
We had Jason
yeah,
from Desperation.
yeah. And finally, of course, Robin, who's showing the Wobble Sphere at Night Games tomorrow and Saturday. I'm going to be there too, so I kind of wanted to. This is me just promoting myself, really, now, isn't it? And
okay, so
you know
I
what?
will
We popped
promote
off the edge of the
yourself.
screen. It's fine. It's fine. We'll live with this. So yeah, this is our Follow Me video stream challenge. This is what we're going to be playing on Saturday night. So it's a game that involves me painting, drawing. Thanks, Tatiana. It involves me painting, drawing, dancing, making poetry, and even singing now, based on things that you type into the chat. So I'll be up on a giant screen. I think it's 12 feet tall. It might have been 20. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to be on an enormous screen. There'll be a QR code that you can scan. And when you scan the QR code, you will be able to send messages that guide me and tell me what to do. So here in the video right now, this was a stream I did for IndieCade last year, where the viewers on Twitch chat could type in things they wanted me to add to my canvas, and so I made them a beautiful painting. As you can see, I've signed it in the corner. I think they've asked me to crumple up some piece of paper and start playing. Oh, they're asking me to paint with a breadstick. I didn't have breadsticks, so I tried to smush together a loaf of bread, like a slice of bread, into a stick that I could use as a paintbrush. So that's the kind of thing that you'll get to do. Tatiana, any questions?
I have else too much questions or no questions. I'm not sure yet. No, but I was lucky enough to see some of your streams. So at least you are not new to the online playformance and playformance in general. With the few minutes we have, could you give us a quick rundown of your career as a playformer?
Yeah. Well, I guess I started out with a stage show called The Incredible Playable Show, which I took to IndieCade in 2017. And that won the Jury Choice Award, so I get to feel very proud of that. So that's a game sort of stage show made up of video games that are designed to be played on a stage. So they're alternative controller games that involve everybody in the audience. So you'll be throwing inflatables around. You might have barcodes attached to your body and people running around the crowd with barcode scanners. You might be tying a tablet to your belly and running around pretending to be a Power Ranger while other members of the audience use you as a human button. So it's a lot of stuff like that. The idea being that everyone in the audience, even if you've not been given a role, there is always a role for you to play in the game. And then I also did a stage show called the Scrambled Eggman Show, which was made up of hacked Sonic the Hedgehog games. And then during the pandemic, started developing these kind of creative live streams where I wanted to bring that kind of chaotic, idea that the Incredible Playable show had, that idea that everybody in the room can join in and add something into the chaos, and use that for creativity. So here we're using it for painting. You can see the audience has asked me to paint cheese or asked me to paint using cheese, and then I'm going to interpret that and build up a rapport with the audience, hopefully, where they start experimenting a bit with what they can encourage me to do creatively. It also, poetry readings where the audience can edit the poem that I'm reading as I'm reading it. I do dancing live streams where the audience can tell me what dance moves to do, and the computer will choreograph them into a 2-hour-long choreography that I have to perform that's constantly changing. So it's all stuff like that. And of course, I don't just do it on live streams anymore. I also do it on the stage. And that's what this Night Games performance is going to be. It's going to be an interesting halfway house between the stage show and the live stream, because of course I'm going to be streaming to a live physical audience in the space, and I'm going to be able to see them as well. So who knows what could come of it?
From the 12-foot long, tall,
12-foot tall or higher plasma screen. Yeah. So I don't think I've never been so large in my life.
Okay. Yeah, me neither, I guess. So yeah, Alistair's crazy. He's a crazy designer. I love his work. First time I played the Incredible Playable show, I was a donut, and last show I saw from you, you promised me a shirt from it that I'm still waiting. Actually,
I promised you a shirt.
Yes.
What was the barcode?
Dynamite Heady.
Dynamite Heady. Oh, what, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
cool.
one with your glitches.
Ah, okay. Yes. I still haven't got those printed yet, but don't worry. No. They will be coming. That's something I want to get more into now, but I realize we're going to run out of time. But I print my own t-shirts and stuff, and I make them using hacked Mega Drive games with glitches and stuff. I'd love to talk about that, but who knows, maybe the next thing you'll see from me is an interactive sewing stream. That's something I really want to play with next, is sewing and fabrics and clothes making. So who knows what could come next.
You can definitely try to connect a digital embroiderer to a computer, because that's already done technically. So you just have to find a way to feed your image to the embroiderer. We can talk about this after the show if you'd like.
Let's do that. Let's talk about that after the show.
Okay.
But unfortunately, that is all we have time for. We are going to have to vacate the room now, but there is more Indiecade coming up. Obviously, Night Games tomorrow night in LA, downtown LA, the Music Center. It's going to be tomorrow night and Saturday night, so please do come along. But there is also more Indiecade action coming up. Go to the Indiecade website, have a look at what the schedule is for the festival, because there are conversations. If you have a ticket, you can come and see conversations with the developers, the creators of this year's nominees and winners. So it's a great opportunity. Lots more amazing stuff coming from Indiecade, so please do stick around. Tatiana, it's been a wonderful show. Thank you very much, as always.
Oh, thank you. You had to juggle with so many technical stuff, so thanks so much for dealing with all that, so we could have enjoyable chats with wonderful guests. So thanks again.
It's been an
And thanks to the
absolute pleasure.
Indiecade for making this possible.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Indiecade. Thank you very much, audience. And we shall all see you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.